Also, right. So there wouldn't be anything to talk about there, I guess.
Perhaps not.
Very slow upload. Yeah, like I'm looking.
There are, I don't have anything prepared, so second, I in Boston, like always a great airline, but the people sitting next to me were the worst people in the whole plane. There was two little kids and a mom
Who can
like stay themselves and like the only lively conversations I see are staff. It's like people in baggage claim or something. They're like, "Yo, dude, do you see that game last night? Yo, it was fucking crazy." Like, those kind of like lively conversations. I only see staff doing that, or like families within their own little units. But as soon as it goes one level, one orbit greater, it's like, oh, maintain the vanilla.
Yeah, the more I think about it, I'm trying to remember if I've ever struck up a convo with somebody in an airport because I've traveled solo quite a bit and convos get struck up, but airports, nothing's coming to mind. You're right. People are sort of bubbled off. Like even the staff are in their own bubble. They're not even looking at the people there. They're just like having these little secret codes and tossing stuff to each other across the room.
Yeah, yeah. Like I'm picturing in my head like when you're checking in, and like there'll be like maybe five or so different desks where you go in and bring your luggage, and like behind in that little area, if for one airline, yeah, they're all doing inside jokes to each other and whatever else. But then like just go down the row, and then there's a whole other bubble doing their own thing, and but it's still a different kind of bubble because they like live there. They work there, so it's like it's like they own that space, but they still don't own it. There's still this overarching like international airport escalator vibe, which just takes over. Um, I remember the only real good conversation I had with another human being that I didn't know in any kind of airplane or airport capacity was a Kiwi boomer. It's an older guy from New Zealand. He was like sitting next to me, I guess, or sitting in front of me, and we just ended up talking for like maybe for a few hours. Like we actually were talking a lot. That was surprising.
You can totally do that and have a greater intimacy because at some point in the combo you realize it's like you're never going to see this person again.
Yes, yes, exactly. It's like awkward at first, but then as soon as you get to that point, it's just like, oh yeah, we can roll with this.
Yeah, I remember like, hugging people that I just met. And I think it's just partially because there's no concern that it's going to be awkward afterwards because you won't see them.
Yeah, nothing to lose. One thing I was expecting on my trip back here, which totally came true, is that the from Hong Kong airport to Doha airport to Boston Logan airport, I knew that the first time I stepped foot in America would be when the bullshit comes in, which it did, and it was tolerable. I've seen worse, but it was definitely like there are three things, bam, 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 in a row, and I was like, wow, you guys are retarded. So one of them was as we're leaving the plane, there's a guy with a clipboard just like singling out random people of color, of course. But he's like, did you fill in the Massachusetts form for quarantine and blah blah blah? And then they're like, yes, and then they just keep walking. Like he doesn't even check their phone or whatever. He's just like, and we've already been checked. Like in Hong Kong, they asked me about that, and they weren't going to let me board the plane in Hong Kong if I didn't fill that Massachusetts form online or whatever. And yeah, so there's some miscommunication there, and like even though that's there and they're trying to like check and be all professional, it's just one old guy who's just like interrupting people. Like he doesn't have a desk. He doesn't like he's not everyone is not required to do this. He's just like some guy standing there kind of randomly choosing people. Like there's no standard to it. You see what I mean?
Yeah, it's pretty intimidating, eh?
It's no, it was the opposite for me. Like in well, in East Asia, especially like Japan, Hong Kong, these kinds of places, like it's really funny. They're very like professional and like rigid, but like their character is very humble at the same time. So it's like you're kind of intimidated because like there's very strict rules that you need to follow, and but beyond that, they're just like nerdy, goofy people, which I like. But I mean, this guy was just like, oh, and then the next thing that happened was we're forming a line to go to passport control, and there's some guy, there's another guy, just another random guy working there who like he's just like there, and he says, "Whoa, whoa, social distancing, hey, social distancing, everybody," and that's it. Like we didn't change how close we were to each other. Everyone just kept going in line, and he just like you could just feel his presence there with his like frown on his face, like, "Whoa, they really should be following the rules, and I really should be more strict about this, but I'm not gonna because I'm pathetic." And yeah, it's really subtle, but this stuff I pick up really. I pick up on it fast, and it does bother me. I might be talking to myself right now.
No, I get it. I get it. The whole hey, tough guy, hey.
It reminded me of it. You know what it is? It's just like it's just pathetic. It's just like a really shitty way of doing your job. Like it reminds me of in school when and I saw this even as a teacher when I was substituting in Vermont. Um, in high school, even in high school, you have these teachers, these normally boomers, who are like, "Whoa, kids, watch the language," and they're like, "What?" Like, okay, yes, yes, teacher, yes, we will. And then they walk, 10 feet away, and they're like, "Yo, can you believe what that bitch said?" Like, you know what I mean? Like, you got to pick your battles. Like, you're gonna lose that battle. You're outnumbered. They don't take you seriously. So like why even bother? Why even try? And so what they do in Doha and in Hong Kong, which is effective, is they'll put a big sign up and they'll put like, guardrails, and they say every single person must come through here, must wear a mask, must so and it's just and they don't tell they like nobody bothers you. It's just you have to follow through the lines and you just like go through and then it's done. And it's like it's way more effective and no one bothered me. So it's like why not just do that? Or just accept the fact that you like no one's going to listen to you and just have fun with your job where you get paid to stand around doing nothing. And then the third,
when they're identified with their ego, they live on tension that requires friction.
yeah, that's you nailed the nail where it should be nailed. So ego, that's all. That's what it is. That's the what all of the vice and sin that I see in New England and other parts of America are revolving around. It's just ego. People are really insecure, and they think they matter so much. It's the worst combination, right? It's like it's why I stayed in China for so long. Is like if you go up to a Chinese person and you say, "Hey, you're a fucking idiot. Like, why did you do that?" You know that there's like 10 other better ways to do that, and they go, "Oh yeah, yeah, me stupid. Of course, I not do it the best way. I know Confucius. I just some guy. Of course, I don't know what I'm doing." You know better way? Oh, you show me. Yes, this better way. Oh, okay, bye. Like they're they're even worse in terms of like ignorance and stupidity and like sheepishness, but there's no ego and they're humble and they're curious. So like everything, there's like a, I guess, a potential or uh I feel like here in rich white people land, everything there's like a very thin thread that's holding everything together. And as soon as you, like a social thing, right? That's holding social situations together. And as soon as you cut the thread, kill each other.
Wow, that's quite. I've just never heard it put that way before. I guess I'm almost shocked to hear you put it that way. I can't say I disagree. The there's no familiarity with the inner I don't want to say demons, but the lusty sort of lower nature, just this like denial of it.
Yeah, denial. Oh man. It's hard to, as someone who is not in denial, it's really, really hard finding ways to to deal with this in others. Like I'm happily open to suggestions because I've been working on this shit for years, especially
Well, you got to
concerning.
understand if you really want to make a difference. You got to understand where people are coming from, and that's largely a demoralized, rootless, confused, angsty, insecure place.
Yeah, yeah, I know that. I guess what I'm scared of is it's not scare, but it's like what my concern is like if I if I myself go down to that level too much, I might not be able to come back again, you know? I can conceptualize things at their level. I always do my best to do that, but beyond that, it's like when people ask me, when a demoralized person asks me to submit or be complacent to their own little self-deception scams and whatever else, I'm just like, no, like no
Right.
way.
You're saying that you don't want to have the burden to uphold other what you know to be people's illusions.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's tough. It's something you have to make peace with, and perhaps you know some sort of idea that like people in a way are entitled to their illusions to a point. The question is, what is the point? And the
Yeah,
answer is,
yeah.
well, when they're demanding that you um bend the knee to their illusions, that's where it's no longer um acceptable, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. And that's what I think I found through personal experience, especially when you have these like vast comparisons between, like Anglo-Saxon, Western white people on the one hand, and then like Asian people on the other, sometimes even from lower class up to higher class. Like I've met tons of different people. And it seems for me like when I was growing up, I was like really nerdy and like an intellectual. So like the problem I had then was I was too picky about that. And if someone wasn't into deeper stuff, I'd say, "Oh, you're fucking idiot. You can't roll with me, right?" And I tricked myself into thinking that was important to me, but it's actually not. Like it is important to me as an individual, but as a member of a society, I really don't care. Like I can hang out with really dumb people and have a great time if they have what really matters, which is like decency, humility, honesty, humor, virtues. There's like a threshold of virtue. As soon as you're at that threshold or higher, let's roll. Let's do something. I'm down. But as soon as that it's lower than that threshold, it makes me into a different person, which I don't like. It makes me into the disciplinarian, so to speak. Even
Yeah. I mean, you gotta study what drives you to act, right?
yeah, well, this is why I'm really happy to not live in America for many years, but also like the situation I'm in now is so funny. Like I'm in, I'm in this little town in Cape Cod, which is normally full of people. Like, I mean, it is full of people like I probably don't want to talk to or be around. But at the moment, I'm in my parents' house, and it's like I'm here alone and surrounded by nature and beauty and sunlight and just nice things, and it's really nice. But I know, like, the more I travel out of here, it's like, uh-oh. And so yeah, I'm gonna go back to Asia, working on a Taiwan application at the moment.
And what will you be doing over there?
Same stuff, ESL teaching, and in my spare time in Taiwan, though, I'll have many more productive things to do, such as judo, which I have not been able to do in like 6 years, and that just like it hurts. It hurts my soul. It's something I really want to do, really need to do, and it's like just logistically impossible. Most places I've been. That's a huge turn on for me when like choosing a place where to live. Mm. Yeah, but I also don't want to teach ESL forever. Like I can teach forever, no problem. But ESL, oh. See, the problem is the more I live in these foreign countries, which could also be like Brazil or Italy, it doesn't have to be Asia, but like the more I live in any of these foreign countries, the more I realize, wow, they have really cool languages that are really smart and like fun, and like English sucks, and I have to like I have to get them to stop using their good language and start using my bad language. It's a useful, like English is the most pragmatic language, like that's it, period. Like that's the global language. If you want to do anything on the internet in the world, like you're going to want to know
English is
English.
the maximum entropy language at the present time.
Oh,
So,
okay, explain that.
have you any experience skiing or snowboarding?
Yeah, a
Have
little
you done
bit.
both?
Just snowboarding.
Okay, so how long did it take you to get proficient?
By my definition of proficient, I didn't get there, but like good enough to go down the hill, maybe 3 or 4 runs, maybe. I don't know. I don't remember. This is a long time ago.
Yeah.
I
Well,
I,
it
I
seems
say
like it's pretty
mm,
hard to actually get your balance on a snowboard versus skiing. Like skiing, you can kind of you
yeah,
could
and
probably ski down the hill the first try with no problem and not fall if you listen, right? It just the pizza slice type thing, but with a snowboard, you're probably going to crack your knees and your etc. a couple times, right? Like I tried it once and it was a disaster. Thank God I had a helmet on. And I'm a pretty good skier, right? But like once you get that point of balance, it's easy to go to pro once you get a good balance in snowboarding. Whereas with skiing, it takes a long time to get to the pro level. So that do you see how
oh,
I'm trying to draw a distinction between like ease of basic assimilation versus perfectionment. So English is kind of like skiing. Anybody can basically piece a slice down a hill. But
right, but
but to become
mm,
an expert English language speaker, you almost have to be have it be your first language. It's almost a requirement. Like maybe, you could argue like Claire is actually could fool a native English speaker as being native English herself.
I
But
think it's a good. I
mostly
think
it's hard. But the point I'm making is that even native English speakers don't have a lot of them do not have an actual command of the language.
yeah. That's what I was gonna say. That's why it's a good analogy. Maybe not. Maybe it's not even like extreme enough an analogy. Like because yeah, like when I think of like a full command of English with you know, uh, to be a master of English, like it doesn't exist. I don't know a single person I've ever met who I could say, wow, like they really know all about English. Like that never happens. We have, like, it's just not like practical. There's too much, like, we have our own like subculture where we kind of live in our own job and like the English words we need for our job. And then, yeah, we have some free time to do some extra things. And then it can never, like,
You go back to its original history is like, I believe the way I saw it described was like a very simplistic barter language. It's possible English is actually a synthetic language that evolved because different Germanic tribes were doing just barter with each other. So it's like, yeah, we'll just like go with this in between language of, super easy.
that makes perfect
It's like
sense.
a gruggish language. And then you look at what English has become today, and it's like, it literally, like, have you seen the movie The Blob?
I haven't seen the movie, but I'm
Okay, what
thinking,
about the
yeah.
Borg? It basically Borged
Oh,
Latin.
Borg, like Star Trek.
No, I originally said blob, but you hadn't seen the blob, so then I went to Borg and I said it Borged Latin.
Right. Borg, you mean Star Trek, right?
I just wanted to get a reference that would be relevant to Dia.
Yeah. Yeah, English definitely seems like a Borg language. Like, yeah. I mean, think about it. Like when you look up any word in the dictionary for English and you go for the origin, the etymology, like at best you can go to like Middle English or Old English, and it's like, but there's like the connection between all that old stuff and now is just it's gone. That's what I mean when I say like no one can be a master of English, because to be a
Well, you
master you
you
need.
can be, but you have to be you have to basically lifestyle it. If you want to achieve this thing, it's like, yeah. Whereas like
Yeah.
language like French, it takes a long time to become proficient in French, but once you're there, you get like you can string together concepts because you know the basic architecture, whereas English doesn't really have a basic architecture. It's a high entropy
Yeah.
language. You could start anywhere. Hey, yo, bud, chair, whatever, take your pick. It's I don't have to know what I'm saying when I start speaking English at the beginning of the sentence. Whereas in French I do.
Yeah. I see that. There's definitely like some kind of like fundamental architecture that just like isn't there. And mm, yeah, to me this is like, now that I've seen the light, so to speak, by being gaining some fluency in Chinese and other Asian languages, it's like it's a castle made of sand, basically. English is, compared to like the exact opposite would be Chinese, where you have the same exact characters for 5,000 years, and it's right there. Like you don't need to look up the origin, the etymology. It's like right there, and it's the same thing it's been for like a long time.
How much of the meaning is imbued through tonality? What percentage would you estimate it at, just from your own impressions?
Um, Meaning like in speech or in writing, because I think those are different. Like the Chinese writing system, you it you can have tone or not have tone. It's irrelevant. I think it's 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 like it's there, but I don't think it's that important. But so for speaking, um, No, it's not important because what happens a lot in Chinese is well, what happens more in Mandarin Chinese than any other language I've seen is people like local native speakers will say to each other, "Ting bu dong," I don't understand what you just said, and then they have to say, uh, 知道的道 or 中道的道, like which Dao are you talking about? You're talking about Dao, Dao, Dao. And so even when you say the tone perfectly, it's still not clear. You really need a context and then it's clear.
Yeah. Here there's a problem where they're too arrogant to ask for context. They feel that such clarifications will be beneath them. So they just go off on these monologues. I would say that like English has the most micro states. So you could theoretically get the highest precision in English, which is what I'm trying to do. But as an actual like thinking man's language, it's not a thinking man's language. Like you need math on top of it to then be able to like think in any type of capacity. It just doesn't lend itself to integral thinking. How about that?
So I kind of missed the first part about people going on monologues. What were you referring to?
The mode of communication that is stereotypical of Westerners.
Right, which does seem the antithesis of the what I see in Chinese all the time, where it's just like, "What? I don't know what you said. What you talking about? Like, tell me exactly what you're talking about." And yeah, and then English is I don't know if I'm explaining the same thing in a different way, but how I see it is like English speakers are always doing opinions and like, what's my view on this? There's no yes or no answers, whereas like in Chinese and it's everything is statement followed by yes or no, and each statement is the asserted truth. Like that's all they're doing is making truth claims and then yes or no, and then I think this is why they're so detached and they don't have an ego problem, because like every day, hundreds of times a day, people are saying, no, you're wrong, like that's wrong, I'm going to show you why that's wrong, and they go, oh yeah, it's wrong, and then you see what I mean, like, yeah. So for example, in Mandarin there's, and probably Cantonese too, there's like a dozen ways you can say yes or no. There's literally a dozen different ways to do yes or no, because that's how common and crucial it is in their communication. And
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
I
interesting the way that you say it. Like I've kind of had this theory in the back of my mind for a while about like there being sort of a limit to the amount of information that actually gets transferred in social type situations, and that there's sort of being a value to an obscurement of certain information.
yes, exactly. And, oh God, I hate that. Like I'm not like, I didn't go full Chinese, but I'm like 80% towards that end of the spectrum where I'm like, I need to know what's happening, what's going on, like just clearly what it is. And then otherwise I'm just like the obscurement that you're talking about, it's, and English in general is great at some things, just like every other language, every other individual, every other culture, there's always going to be some things it's good at. For example, comedy and art and like poetry, like those are like things where like the obscurement is like beautiful, and like it's what you want to get a really good poem. Or comedy, like stand-up comedy in English is just awesome, it is so amazing, and there's nothing like that in China. In most Asian countries, like stand-up will never be a thing, doesn't matter how many big famous TV shows or whatever you show them, it's never going to click, because that's just like, what, like it doesn't compute.
Very interesting. Yeah, I almost feel like there's a formula where it like wouldn't matter what you said and you could get a laugh out of people because there's like a certain body language. It's like, da-da-da, da-da-da. What's the deal with sandwiches?
That's true. That this is the problem with the big red button philosophy, right? Which you can apply to anything, right? But so there always is a formula, but it's like a spiral. So you can only catch it and hold on to it for a little while, and then you lost it. You know what I mean? So as soon as you find that formula and you just play out the body language, it'll last for a little while, and then people will pick up on it and get bored of it, and then you have
the
yeah.
half-life of the comedic anecdote.
Half-life. That's a good. I think that's describing it nicely. Yeah, where it's like even when you do find the big red button, it's got a half-life. It's not. There's no like that 100% perfection kind of thing that we often look for. Like in this world, no, it doesn't happen ever. In, let's say, the spiritual world, I think that can happen, but not for us miscreants.
Well, we're sort of like in the spiritual world. So
we are and we're not at the same time, right?
well, it's like a mirror. Are you going to look in the mirror, or are you going to look away? Are you going to look through the looking glass type thing?
Well, to me, I describe my reality here in my present body incarnation as freedom. It's a paralyzing freedom where I can look in the mirror or not look in the mirror. I can discard the mirror or set up a factory to manufacture mirrors. Like I'm bouncing between both worlds all the time, moment to moment. So I can't say I'm in the spiritual world, and I can't say I'm only in the material world either. But I do prefer, actually, as much as I am interested in, theology and whatever other abstract stuff, I actually prefer to be a little bit more grounded in this like 3D reality, probably because like mechanics, meaning like the if I try too hard going the spiritual route, like eventually I'll get to the point where I just can't come back here, and that I feel like that process should be very smooth. Otherwise, it's gonna be trouble. But I can't be fully in the material world either, because
Well,
then
it just
that
sounds like you're not
sucks.
ready to go for that level. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, I've already been there though. And
But
it's
that,
like
so Howie makes the same claim, but like if you'd actually achieve enlightenment, you would not come back from it. That's the definition.
I don't, well, there's different definitions, but I think
Well, there's people who think that they can redefine things, and then there's definitions of things. And the people who think they can redefine things are just foolish.
No, you can't redefine things, but there are, and especially in English, there are many different facets of certain definitions. So like enlightenment, there's, the short Satori Eureka enlightenment, and then there's like the big enlightenment, like moksha, mukti. Like those are, bam, right there. I got two different definitions for you, which makes it a messy situation to conceptualize.
There's also entirely different schools of thought.
Yeah, totally. So I think, so when I got my enlightenment and then I came back here to this world, it's not because this world is better than the enlightened world. It's because my nervous system is not ready to sustain that kind of output and input from the transcendental world. That's what I mean by mechanics. It's like And so I guess if I do really want to go back and stay in the spiritual transcendental realm, the most important thing I can do is just like eat food properly, like exercise properly, and just like, yeah, just make my nervous system more capable of withstanding high amounts of bliss on a moment to moment basis, which, yeah, it sounds like, oh, bliss is good. So then more bliss is more better, right? Not really.
More
Like,
bliss is more better.
yeah, that's English.
Mo bliss, mo problems.
Mo bliss, mo better, yo. I don't know, man. I mean, I don't really. Well, whatever. I don't really get it. I don't see how you could possibly come back from enlightenment. I don't know what you're talking about. It sounds like you were on some kind of spirit quest thing of like massive renunciation and unification with the spiritual realm or some, I don't know.
The technical experience term to describe my experience would be Paramatma realization, I think, or union, whatever.
That was what you got and not some low level hallucination. That's always the problem with perception, right? How would you possibly know the difference?
Right. Well, you need to study between true hallucinations and fake hallucinations, which I've been doing for like years and years. So that is basically how I know. If I didn't,
I just like all the hallucinations.
right. Well, you could also say that even the thing that isn't a hallucination is actually a hallucination anyway. Like that's Maya, right? Like our whole world is a hallucination. That's not just like a cop out. That's like a really potent and valid metaphysical claim. I
don't really think that it's all that valid to say that everything is illusion, because it's tautological. Tautological things have very restricted value, and to call tautological things are usually in the domain of axioms, and to say that Maya is an axiom makes no sense, because something has to be real in order for there to be an illusion. Like you need a desert. In order to have a mirage, you need a desert. So the question is, what's the desert and what's the mirage? Like what's the real and what's the non-real in that sense?
Right. So when I say like Maya in an axiomatic sense, I don't mean the only axiom, but it can seem that way because it's not an
axiom, though. It's an observation. It's a conclusion. This is drawn based on observation.
Right, but let's just say
realizes the state of the supreme self, and then through the realization of the supreme self can then make a deduction that the other perceptions of self are in some way veiled by Maya.
Let's just say for now that Maya is a real thing, which is weird, but
to say that something hallucinatory or illusionary is real is a contradiction, because an illusion is not real. That's what an illusion is. It's either a distortion of reality or something that is separate from reality.
Yeah, so it's okay. We're living in this world which is a reflection and separate from reality, but it's
again, what is reality, right?
Right. Well, that's why we get lost, because reality is Satchit Ananda, let's say. Okay.
I think the allegory of the cave fits in quite nicely here.
Of course, yeah. Maya and the allegory of the cave, the Matrix, these are all the same thing, just with different words. What I'm saying is that the real world, quote, real, it's totally there, and it's totally more real than this fake world, but it's way more difficult and strange to get to. So it seems like it's not real for us whose senses are used to living in the not real world. So
Wait, would you say that this world is derived from the real world? Like, it's an impure form of it?
yeah, exactly. And we're just getting so habituated to being in this impure body, in this impure world, that we think this is real. But all we got to do is just flip that on its head.
The
And
thing
then,
is, this is real too. It's just less real than the more real thing, which is the
yeah,
spiritual. The spiritual
yeah,
is real and the material is real, but the spiritual causes the variations of the material. So the spiritual is more real in that it is the ultimate cause.
yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Um,
So to answer Howie's question, it's like, what are you describing? Like, are you describing your own perception? Your own perception relative to reality. And again, we got to define reality, but we just say reality is the what exists, the space-time continuum, and subjective reality is what you perceive in your field of consciousness. And yes, that field of consciousness is created by the real world, reality, right? Fair enough.
I was trying to relate this back to the discussion you had with Kashif back on Friday, I believe it was, um, about platonic solids and the derivation of reality from them.
Oh, awesome. I'm glad you like that. Yeah, I mean it requires a tremendous amount of focus. And unfortunately most people don't have the focus required to actually do it. But yeah, if you can, because ultimately you recurse back enough and the supreme reality is better to it is better to perceive supreme reality as platonic forms than what you see around you, because that's what actually turns what's around you into the more beautiful, more idealized forms. So it's kind of ironic that like the non-real things end up being the most important things to think about, because I guess they're meta real. Like a sphere is meta real because the sphere is unobservable, but it is a shape that predicts what happens in the observable universe.
I'm thinking in back about like with the Chinese way of like communicating, because like you said a moment ago, Jen, that like, is this my perception of reality or something else? And my initial reaction was just like, it's just that I'm just speaking like the truth as I see it. So what I'm saying is, does it even matter? Like if something is reality or our perception of reality, because at the end of the
Yeah,
day,
reality does matter because the more in line you can think with reality, the more purified your thoughts will be.
right, but every time you utter something, you are in your reality uttering whatever is true in your reality, right?
Well, certain things are, um, what's the word? Um, they rhyme. I don't know if that makes sense. That's the best word I can think of of describing it. Certain things rhyme. Like I can't tell you what reality
Resonate?
is, but I can write you a limerick that rhymes with reality, but I can't tell you what reality is.
Certain phrases resonate with reality.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That I mean, however you want to put that, you want what you say to be as much in line with that as possible because that is where you get the power.
Oh, and by the way, the thing that prompted me to come on here was actually the discussion of the Chinese language,
Mm.
because I'm actually pretty fascinated by that. Um, and in my understanding of it, it's actually very clear, and it's not like not exactly like Japanese, where it is very context driven. The pronunciations are very subtle and very difficult to get right. Like you have like like each vowel has like 5 or 6 different ways of pronouncing it, and it's like you could easily mix up any one of those, and Chinese is that language where if you mix up one single vowel pronunciation, you go from saying like I want to say hi to your mother to saying like your mother is a pig or something.
Yeah, that's what you would think, but actually, I mean, that does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but um, the context gets more and more obvious the longer the sentence is. So once you have like a 6-word sentence, let's say, and you start to make tonal mistakes, like they the Chinese ear just doesn't really pick up on it, or it doesn't like matter so much. Like they're so used to misunderstanding each other that they just kind of keep shooting out words of their face until they go, "Oh yeah, 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 I know what you mean. Yeah, 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 yeah." So yeah, it's
So it's like you can mess up on the pronunciation, but the longer you speak, the more context there is, and the more likely people are to understand it. Uh, uh, is that right?
yeah. I mean, that's also a universal truth for all languages, but more importantly, it's a common practice in Chinese where like this is why they speak very fast. They don't know how to speak slow. It, because the more words you can shoot out of your mouth, the the better your chances are of being understood and getting stuff done. So that's just how they've evolved to use their own language because of the tonal differences, because of whatever else with and also the way the grammar matches the tones is interesting too. The Chinese has like no grammar. It's bare bones. Like you like so if you in an ideal world, if you speak all the tones perfectly and someone has like a perfect ear, you can say the shortest possible sentence in Chinese of like 2 syllables, 3 syllables, and you can say like very, very deep, meaningful things in no time at all. But that's just really difficult and impractical. So what ends up happening is they just kind of slur a lot of the characters and words together, and they just end up speaking really long sentences, and they just add in more and more words to make it in time more and more clear what they're saying.
That actually sounds a lot like Japanese as well, except the Japanese actually do functionally remove a lot of grammar from their sentences, and they're still understood. Japanese is very, very, very context-driven language, and in my studies of it, I started out going through the formal stuff, and then I moved on to a little bit of more informal stuff. And some of the first things that you learn in informal Japanese is like, oh yeah, you can say all of this long sentence and you'll be understood, but it sounds really weird because people just aren't that formal all the time.
Hmm. Yeah, there's definitely quite a few differences between Chinese and Japanese.
Oh yeah,
But yeah,
Japanese is a lot easier too. Except I can't speak for the writing systems because Japanese is literally like 4 different writing systems, and Chinese I believe is only one.
yeah, Chinese is just the characters. That's all you've got. Well, now we have Pinyin, the transliteration language, which I'm super grateful for because it's really well standardized. So um, when I'm speaking Chinese with someone and I don't know what they say, I can say, spell it in pinyin, So like ni hao is NIHAO. And if you type that into a translator, it'll come out with exactly what you're looking for, like 90% of the time.
So wait, what is it called again?
Pinyin. I'll write it.
That's what it's called. Okay, I didn't know that because I've always seen like the English lettering, but I didn't know what that was called. In Japanese, they have a similar thing, and it's called romanji.
Yeah, yeah. And the Japanese one is also really good. But if you go to like Thailand and many other, like with Sanskrit, this is a huge problem for me, which I still haven't figured out. Like a lot of these other languages, they don't have a standardized transliteration language yet. So you talk to one guy, he says LA, the other guy says LAH, the other guy says LOE or something like, and it's just like in the native language, if you can write it in their own script and you can do, then there's no problem. But for us as foreigners learning the language, like it makes it way easier with something like romaji or pinyin.
Oh, I will say this. Kanji is the Chinese characters in Japanese, but the Chinese characters in Japanese are very different from modern day Chinese characters. But the two other scripts that are used in Japanese are so easy to learn.
Yeah.
You can learn both of them in a single day if you really want to.
Yeah. But, well, I mean, katakana is useful because that's really how you get to work around with the foreign loan words. But hiragana is actually mostly just a tool to help assist the use of the kanji. But we should clarify, kanji is not actually different from Chinese characters. They're the same characters, but they're used differently and they often have different meanings. And that's where it gets tricky.
Well, also, like some of the Chinese character, some of the kanji that the Japanese use are no longer used, at least not commonly in China.
Right. But that doesn't mean they're different characters. It's the same characters. They're just, yeah, it's a different use. So if you read an old Chinese text, you're bound to come across some characters that look totally foreign to a modern Chinese person. But it doesn't mean it's not Chinese. It's just those characters have gone out of usage over time. What's really interesting was I got a book, I got a gift. I don't know where this is. It's the Diamond Sutra, I think, which is the oldest printed and dated book in history. It's only about 1,000 years old. It's not that old, but as far as books that were printed by a printing press and dated, I guess it's the oldest one we found. Anyway, I opened it up and I was reading through it and I was like, wow, I actually like know a lot of these characters here. And I told that to my coworker, the teacher who gave it to me, and she's like, no, trust me. Like, even if you knew all the characters, you don't understand what they're talking about, because even though they're using the same characters, the way they're using the characters and the way they combine them with other characters is just different from what we do now. So reading a lot of these ancient texts is like, for me, it's a fun challenge, but it's definitely a challenge. It's not something you can just like pick up and expect to understand it.
Well, sure. Look at how many people have attempted to interpret the Veda, and even Indians haven't had much luck creating an integral science from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually, this is kind of hilarious, but trying to read katakana, I'm still not that good at it. Like, I can read and sound out the characters, but putting them together into words, and especially putting them together into meanings, like a friend of mine, he actually sent me katakana characters, and I sounded them out. I was like, ke tu ki fu rai do chi ka.
I don't
And I
really
was
think
like,
we could
what the fuck does that mean?
subject or
And he was
something.
like, oh, it's Kentucky Fried Chicken. I was like, oh, oh, oh. What were you saying, Jen?
I just think it might be time to change the subject. Kind of boring.
Yeah, if you're not into this stuff, I could definitely see how it would sound boring and useless. The I don't think the culture stuff is though. Meaning, like, I, Jen, earlier you talked about the like a thinking man's language. Like Chinese is totally that. Like maybe not the best of the best, but it's like top tier for sure. So like if we were all the three of us having this chat in Chinese, it'd be just way better. And
Oh,
of course that's impossible, but what I'm trying to bring to the table, what I can bring to the table is the culture, the Chinese culture of communication that which we can adopt into English without even knowing Chinese. And if like even without me, you can do that. You just go into Chinatown and try speaking English with these people. And the way like Chinese English is what I'm talking about, basically.
well, I actually have a bit of a theory about the average Japanese intelligence and their language,
Mm-hmm.
because you know, using or encountering new things actually increases brain cell count and thusly increases intelligence over time. And the Japanese have such a complex linguistic system, uh, specifically of writing, that I've actually posited that that may actually be part of why their average intelligence is much higher than the average intelligence of the West.
Another aspect with Japanese and Chinese is the visual aspect. So, my Uber driver taking me to the Hong Kong airport, he said that some studies showed that dementia is much less likely to happen in Chinese people. And he said it's because of like you have a whole other aspect to work with these languages. It's not just like a bunch of letters that you just string together and it just kind of means what it means. Like every time you utter something in Chinese, there's a visual aspect to it, which is not just like a symbol. It's an interwoven system of meaning, of like Lego blocks chunking meaning together. You could think of it as like a diagram, like it's just one big never-ending diagram.
Well, yeah, it's like I can't. Well, I mean, I'm guessing that this would have to be true for Chinese characters as well, but kanji is basically pictographs.
Yeah, that's how I see them most of the time. So
Yeah,
what?
so that's an interesting theory that the English language is causative of this type of decay. Because, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, English is just like English speakers are bad learners. There's nothing to grab onto that you can just stick the information in. It's just like adversarial, confrontational, aggressive thing to it. I guess
Well,
that's the karma of the English language.
I would say that the English language doesn't necessarily cause the decay, but it certainly allows for it a lot more easily than other linguistic systems. It lacks the
Mm.
complexity and it
Well, it's
lacks
not
the
the
visual
language;
elements.
it's the culture. It's
Oh
the
yeah,
culture, not the language. The language is just the language doesn't stave off decay of the mind the way an integral language would. So there's a non-integral language slash a non-integral culture equals decay, because the act of thinking is actually itself undermining your ability to think.
Another thing I forgot to mention that English is good at is imperialism and colonialism. So,
Yeah, it chops
but
everything up into tiny pieces, which is the opposite of integralism. And integralism is what keeps the mind healthy. Like
yeah,
it's
so
the visualization of the thinking process and the like what you were describing. Did you say a castle? I forget exactly how you described it.
castle made of sand.
Well, no, that's not what I meant. But it was when you were describing the Asian languages as being kind of like integral in some sense.
Yeah, I'm still not sure.
Another thing that I would like to point out, specifically Japanese and English. I'm not actually as familiar with Chinese as I am with Japanese, but like I keep saying, Japanese is a very context-driven language. There aren't actually a lot of terms that are hyper-specific. But in English, we actually get specific to a point where it can actually cause problems.
Hmm. Well, the culture is really the key here, because like when two people disagree with each other over some words they said, in many English speaking countries and English speaking people, like it could be knives out, guns out, like let's do it. But in China, that just fucking happens. Like it's like part of the deal of being Chinese is like you talk to your friends and family you last about 20 minutes and then they go, huh? 听不懂. What'd you say? What do you mean like that? Like this or like that? This is just like a common, and so because it's common for them, it's now part of their culture also to be like patient and forgiving in these sorts of circumstances. Um, about the so with English language and culture, another critical thing here is propriet. I don't know if that's the right word. Proper, being proper, and like manners and politeness and speaking English properly. That's like one of the cardinal virtues in our language and our language culture. I think it's not telling the truth and it's not saying something meaningful. It's more the what our language rewards, I think most of all, is saying it properly. So think about like Barack Obama, like how he speaks. When we say, wow, he's got really good English, you know what I mean? Like he could be saying nothing. He could be saying absolutely fucking nothing, but the way he speaks and the cadence and the the voice and that's wow. We can, and Bill Clinton also, of course. That's good English to us, right? I don't like proper English. I think it's how to say this GEY.
GHEY. Jeez.
Oh, that's it. That's it. GHEY. I'm a bit slow with this stuff.
Well,
And also,
something's got to change in the culture, or people are just going to keep destroying themselves. Which hopefully
Yeah.
they don't have to actually get to the point of destroying themselves before the culture can change. But there seems to be so much momentum of self-destruction that I think it is inevitable of just some sort of collapse
Yeah.
of this ideology.
Just like Mr. Smith said, it is inevitable.
Well, there's no value proposition,
Yeah.
so it's eventually just going to get overtaken by something with a value proposition.
Well, no, that's not entirely true. There's many value propositions, like what I'm doing with Ethos. That's a totally viable value proposition, but
I'm
there's
talking
so
about the
many of
value
us.
proposition of the culture of the West.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about too. Like you
we need
can use
introduced
Ethos
abacuses.
to do all of this stuff, but there's many other people also offering their own value proposition. I think it might be more about unity or like harmony. That's the word, harmony. There's no harmony. We're so atomized, right, into all these different bubbles, and no one is really that interested in sacrificing their own little things to come together for a greater whole, where the whole is greater than the parts. And that's exactly what you see in China, regardless of if you like them or not. Like, it's a totally unified country of like 1.6 billion people. And that's a powerhouse.
You also see that for the most part in Japan as well. Those countries, like, as shitty as China's economy and their government is, the people themselves actually got their shit together. They are very intelligent, very capable, and actually relating back to a cultural aspect that should actually be adopted into the West is the abacus, because apparently the abacus it is such a powerful tool that even if you have enough training with it from a young age, you can go without it and just use it as a visualization tool, and you can do advanced mathematical problems in your
What do you
head
think
just
the
using
periodic
visualization.
table is? The periodic table is literally a three-dimensional abacus. This is not self-evident or worth mentioning.
I don't know about that. I thought the periodic table was just a list of elements,
Well, I've got it displayed on. Do you have the stream? Can you see it?
I see balloons.
That's the quantum periodic table reflected 4 times. It's one object reflected first in a vertical axis and then in a horizontal axis.
And I already forgot what Howie was saying. So you're saying
But
this
he's saying the abacus is really useful.
Oh,
And I
abacus?
said, there's your abacus, genius.
But why is this an abacus? Why isn't it
Because
just
it
a list of
functions-
things
It
reflected?
functions, well, in this depiction, it functions as an abacus. It's
No,
a
the quantum periodic table gives you a tool for very rapid sorting of elements, basically. And actually,
it doesn't.
Jen did a good job on that.
Oh, thanks. Thanks that somebody's finally noticed, and that it's not just me having to endure endless insults from imbeciles on the internet. But yeah, you can use this thing as an abacus, and the abacus itself is very good for certain types of mathematical problems, microcomputing type stuff. So yeah, I agree. I mean, we got to get an abacus going. We got to build the 3D abacus with a periodic table.
I think that is, like, the West is so fucked. Like, it's gonna.
Yeah, I know. That's why we use the abacus to save them, and then we save them from themselves.
How can the abacus be enough?
Because it answers
it's
every
not. It's
question.
just
So long as you are a master of the abacus, you can master any question. If you can't answer a question, it's because you just haven't mastered that well enough. Because it contains all the information in the universe.
Ethos. Are you familiar with Terence McKenna?
Yes.
Have you ever seen that video called Ralph Abraham Gets Wordsmithed by Terence McKenna?
I don't think so.
Oh my god. Okay, it's like 9 minutes long, but watch it. Basically, Ralph Abraham starts out. It's an excerpt of like a 4-hour dialogue or discussion between like 4 different people. But this was like a 9-minute segment near the end of that 4 hours, and Ralph Abraham, this little clip Ralph Abraham starts out saying, I've witnessed the destruction of mathematics in Western civilization, and this is a problem. And Terence McKenna goes off on this, like, spur of the moment, completely off the cuff monologue about how important mathematics is, not because of mathematical equations like the quadratic equation are somehow important to everyday life, but because of mathematical reasoning.
I see the point, but I don't think it's true by necessity in every circumstance. Meaning, I think there are bound to be even the most extreme communist, leftist, whatever, or even far right, whatever your idea is of the person, the group of people who are destroying the West, there's bound to be some of those people who can totally do math fine. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but if more people, the argument that McKenna laid down was that mathematical reasoning actually grants people a sort of precision that other forms of logic do not grant, and that precision is actually necessary to disprove different forms of nonsense.
Yup.
Yeah, it totally helps, but is that the most fundamental thing? It
Yep.
could be like
In the West, it's the most relevant thing. Traditionally, obviously, it's not the most relevant thing. But in order for them to understand what the traditional most relevant thing is, it has to be done in a way that's relevant to them and this mathematics thing. Yes, that is the answer.
Okay, so I don't know if this is true, but the word rationality, that may come from the root ratio, right? So being able to, I don't know if that's true, but it is true that to be rational means to put a ratio onto something and then find the right proportion, like the golden mean, for instance. And yeah, this is one major lack I see in everyone I meet. Like, they just do something, and I go, well, did you stop to think of that could be too much or too little, and the greater context? And they just don't have an equation running. They're just kind of the next number in sequence is just they just keep going on a sequence, right? As opposed to doing algebra or fractions or trigonometry, one of these higher order mathematics, which uses numbers as a subservient component part, as opposed to that's all that it is. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we just keep going.
I'm not sure I follow what the point of that was.
Well, I'm trying to understand what you guys are saying when you're talking about math as being the problem. That's the only way I can make sense of what you're saying.
I don't think either of us said that math was the problem. I think I'm saying that math is part of the solution.
Oh, okay.
It's the sort of a precision in logic that the precision in thought that mathematics gives to an individual who is skilled in mathematics that is useful. Yeah.
Yeah, look, this can help, but logic, even logic itself, is ultimately just a tool. It's not the be all end all. This is why even if and when in my lifetime, I doubt this will happen, but if the West does somehow stop being fucked up, I'll still stay in the East, because logos and logic is really fun and it works and there is a divine aspect to it, but it's not the whole picture. So someone who has really good logic, but they're fucked up and they're an asshole and they're immature, the West is full of these people. I think there's actually a lot of people who are at least decent at logic. Maybe they're not masters, but the problem is not themselves and their family. They're not willing to sacrifice their life for any noble cause. I think that's closer to really the root issue.
Honestly, I'm with you on that, but I also think that's kind of an issue in the East as well. I think that's just a human problem. But I would actually live in the East because, like, Japanese and Chinese girls are fucking hot, dude.
I wouldn't use the word hot, but I would use the word hot to describe Asian American girls who, have been here for a while and then they start doing the same like makeup, dress, culture stuff that Western girls do. Then they get really hot. But actually, your average Chinese girl is like really shy and like cute. Like it's very rare to meet a hot Chinese girl actually.
Well,
But
I mean, speaking on physical attractiveness and not like persona.
Can we maybe
Yeah,
save this conversation for a different stream where you guys can explore this and other subjects that are related with whatever degree of precision you would like?
Sure.
Well, I mean, I think this is essentially the problem is people want to be able to say, yeah, my opinions are worth something, but no, I'm not going to do the work required to substantiate them. And whether people care that's how people feel.
Just all right. Well, what I'm saying is a full level deeper than that. I don't mean deeper. I mean a full level lower, meaning more fundamental, which is that opinions don't fucking matter. Period. I don't care how many PhDs you have. I don't care what your opinion is. I care what your truth is and what the truth is. That's the only thing that I actually care about. Opinions are like Pepsi or Coke. Either way, it doesn't fucking matter. That's opinions.
No. Pepsi and Coke are not opinions. If you drink Pepsi, there is something wrong with you.
What about Pepsi Blue?
If you drink Pepsi, there is something wrong with you.
Could we keep the stream in an intellectual direction, please? Because this is just...
So, Jen, if please refute what I just said, if you'd like.
What are you saying? That what you're saying is a level deeper
than
what I'm saying? No, it's not possible to go deeper than what I'm saying.
All right, well,
because I made my whole system intentionally so that there'd be nothing more fundamental than it, so that I wouldn't have to contend with anything more fundamental because I didn't want to.
Well, that's a great intention, but what you just said is that we have to like listen to other people's opinions and treat them intellectually and so on and so forth. I'm saying fuck that whole game. Why would anyone deal with any opinions ever?
What I'm saying is that no opinion should be taken seriously unless the person has made an effort to qualify themselves as an expert. And even then,
that's ethos.
They should be willing to submit their work to quote unquote peer review or community review or whatever.
Well, you're talking about textbook ethos, so I'm happy to hear that. But I would still go. I mean, yeah. So I'm not going to disagree with that, but it's like that word opinion. It just like it's the opposite of true intellectualism. The idea of opinions is the opposite of
everything is opinions. Why do you think that Krishna always said that is my opinion?
I know exactly why he said that. It's not because that's his opinion. It's precisely yes, it's because that is the absolute truth. But he wants to tell us that it's his opinion, so it's easier for us to accept.
So now you're deciphering the mind of Krishna.
That's what I do when I read Krishna.
You interpret his intentions, but who are you to do that?
I'm just a guy. I'm not saying I'm right about everything, but he's a person. So I treat him like a person, like every other person.
Especially the lesson with Krishna is that he wasn't just another person. He was a person who managed somehow to convince a bunch of people that he was the person. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he convinced me beyond any doubt.
there was
he
another person
qualified
who
his
was
statements as opinions. So yeah, opinions. It's all opinions. That's the whole point of the non-dualist framework. Is that it's all opinions.
No. It's a what's the word? Gimmick. Krishna's doing a gimmick.
Krishna's doing a gimmick now.
Yeah,
Really?
he's
in the Bhagavad Gita.
rascal. He's stealing butter, remember? He's
In
playing
the-
with us.
In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna made it clear that Brahman is the all-pervasive spirit that makes up everything, and Krishna is actually just part of Brahman as well.
Can we get an actual citation for that? Because
Yeah.
That's the Bhagavad Gita right there.
Not
Which chapter and
Prabhupada's
verse?
Gita.
Actually, that is in the Prabhupada translation as well.
Yeah,
which is
can I get a
certified-
chapter and verse?
It's going to take some time because I only listened to the Prabhupada audiobook. But I can post a link to that.
I'm not going to listen to an entire audiobook, but if you want to point to a chapter and verse, I'm willing to look at it. I'm not necessarily willing to endorse whatever hash-headed interpretation has been made on its behalf, however. Anyway, I don't remember how we got onto this exactly or what we were disagreeing about. But yeah, it's all opinions. And Krishna makes that clear that even his wonderful statements are opinions.
Within the realm of personhood, yes. Within greater metaphysical realms, no. Opinions don't matter.
That's true. They don't matter. So the only relevant opinions that are subjective that matter are the ones that are, what's the word? Resonant with that abstract one. That the opinion that isn't really an opinion. It's just facts.
Right. So you could argue that Krishna's opinions are the greatest opinions in that sense.
Yeah, you could. Yeah. I like that approach. What's wrong with that?
Nothing. I think that's what I've already done in my heart a few years ago. I think it totally works, but that's not everything, I think.
It's the Gita chapter 8.
Which verse?
Well, it's a whole bunch of verses, but it really seems to start with verse 3, because verse 3 says, Krishna said, Brahman is the supreme imperishable. The individual self is called Adayam. I can't pronounce that fucking word. The creative power that...
I'll just pull it up on the... as it is.
He basically goes off and says Brahman is all these things and is everywhere at all times and in everyone and all that. And when I listened to the Prabhupada audiobook, I noticed that was still included, which means that...
Let's have a look at the translation. I don't know if you can see the YouTube, Howie, but I've got it displayed now. The Supreme Lord said, the indestructible, transcendental living entity is called Brahman, and its eternal nature is called the Self. Action pertaining to the development of these material bodies is called karma, or fruit of activities. That's the quote.
Yeah, this whole chapter, though, goes on about Brahman.
I think Brahman is Atman, synonymous in this verse 3 at least, because Krishna also says I am higher than Brahman in different ways in other verses.
Okay, physical nature is known to be endlessly mutable. The universe is the cosmic form of the Supreme Lord, and I am that Lord represented as the super soul dwelling in the heart of every embodied being. I don't think that this is Krishna saying he's... What was it that you were how you were trying to interpret this exactly, Howie?
Well, I was actually interpreting it in the same way Ethos Ananda was trying to interpret it, which is basically that Krishna was allowing this greater entity of Brahman to speak through him.
Okay.
And I actually I relate that to a sort of Christian Gnosticism as well, because there's a similar belief that in Gnosticism that when you achieve gnosis, you are basically this egoless thing, but you are still an ego. You're just the ego of the divine, and the divine speaks through you. And they believe that that's what Christ was. And they would also argue that that is what Krishna was.
They have no real similarities in their personalities, so it would be a very foolish parallel to draw.
I don't think that's true. I think Christ and
Whatever
Krishna.
similarities exist are not as important as the colossal differences.
Right. Well, I was just going to say the similarity is the voice, meaning even like the Dalai Lama, I think, also has this same kind of voice, if you will, which is not personality exactly, but it's one of the main symptoms, I think.
Well, the differences between Christ and Krishna are really a matter of opinion as to whether or not they are colossal or not. They really did say very similar things. Both preached, a focus on God and doing what God wills you to do. Well, I mean, Krishna put it more as what Dharma wills you to do. But that concept is still very similar, because who is the Lord of Dharma aside from the Lord of Dharma? And when it comes down to it, the details of the characters are really kind of small when you put it into that sort of perspective.
I'm reading through chapter 8 now. Sorry, I'm trying to juggle different things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's absolutely absurd, to the point of just shock that anybody would ever try to draw that kind of parallel. I mean, the parallels are they're sun gods. They had a following. And they walked around.
The ultimate message is the same. It is submit to me and I will save you forever, basically. Right?
They are both
Where exactly does
personifications of
Krishna
the
say
ultimate.
submit?
Love me, devote to me, whatever. Same thing. To me, it's all the same thing. At like chapter 18, verse 65 or whatever.
Where does he compel Arjun to submit?
Many times.
He submits to Arjun. He says, "Your choice, my liege. I shall be your charioteer, or you shall have my army."
At the very beginning of the Gita.
Look, if you want to get hang up on the word submit, that's fine. I just mean,
well, submission is central to religion, I think. So I don't want to know. I don't know what hung up on it, but you're making an assertion that is absolutely cartoon tier, and I don't see how it could possibly lead to any fruitful discussion. As the
let's just call it love. Krishna says, love me. If you can't do this yoga, this karma yoga, this jnana yoga, whatever, just love me, just come to me, and I will protect you, and I will save you, and so on. Christ says the same thing, does he not?
They both also try to stop an impending doom. They're both emanations of a preservation deity.
I don't know what the impending doom that Christ was saving them from was.
Well, with Krishna, it was the end of the universe, the end of or it was more to save people from the Kali Yuga. With Christ, it was more to save people from, the hell that was more of a metaphysical concept at the time, but also sort of a political end goal.
Yeah,
Which also draws another comparison between the two, because they both got involved in politics.
yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's Chabadua. It's close enough comparison. But Jen, what do you think about what I said? I'm waiting for a refutation.
So you're saying the love is the connection. Yeah, so you're making my point. Some abstract term with no definition that involves feels.
No, you don't know what love means? I mean, it's not abstract. It's
I
just
know
like
what I know, and love doesn't really fit into what I would consider as highly it's a
you can
result, not a cause.
call it devotion. Is that okay?
Devotion.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
submission.
if we're discussing love, I do
Fine.
believe
Call
I
it
do believe
submission.
that
Why is
love
that so
actually
different?
has multiple different words in both Sanskrit and Greek. Uh, Parts of the Bible were written in Greek, and of course, Greek has like 4 different words for love. I believe something similar can be said about Sanskrit. Are there multiple words for love in Sanskrit?
Tons. Yeah. Maybe not tons,
Because
but yeah.
there's
Yeah, there are.
like agape, which is like romantic love, and then there's also um, or wait, was agape romantic love? Man, there's another kind of love that's like just like fondness for people.
Mm.
And even in the Bible, we see different forms of the word love in Greek being used.
So in Sanskrit, there's a few that pop into my head quickly is prema, bhava, and what was it? Oh, bhakti. So you could translate bhakti as a kind of love or loving service or loving devotion, and then, but like prema is like the goal. That's like the love you have for God, and God, maybe not God has prema for us, but the love we want to have for God that overrules everything else in our life. That's kind of like prema. And bhava is like almost identical to that too, but it's still a separate word. So yeah, if you want to go into the personal, Vedanta literature in Sanskrit, it's like the Eskimos and the snow thing. Of course, you're going to find so many different words for this thing with all these tiny little differences, and
Right.
that's
So
really
when there's
great.
a lot of words for something, that means it's an imprecise definition usually, which is bad.
Or there are different forms of it that are referenced separately.
Yeah, it's because there is precision. That's why there's different definitions, so we can
Having
have
a
some
bunch of
precision
different
there.
definitions for the same thing equals imprecise. Having
All
only
right,
one definition equals precise.
they're technically not different things. There are separate things. That's why they're separate words. But when I'm talking to some Brazilian twerk star, let's say, I don't know, that's what first came into my head. I mean, Brazil was the random country, and then, oh, what is Brazil famous for? But if I'm just talking to some random person, I'm not going to say prema or Ananda even. I'm not just going to whip out some Sanskrit
That's
words.
because it's not a concept that can be conveyed. Therefore, you
No,
don't try to
it's
convey it.
really simple. It's really simple. It's just
Love,
love. It's
man. Just
devotion,
love, man. No, it's not.
submission,
It conveys no
loving
information.
submission. You can,
Loving submission.
if you don't like the word submission, you can say loving submission if it
Okay,
makes you feel better.
Question. Are Jesus and Krishna embodiments of the same God?
That's up for debate.
Yeah, it's up for debate.
Is it?
I mean, I think they're close enough where I don't care to look into it more. Meaning,
I like
like
to think that they are, but I still say it's up for debate.
to me, they're both clearly divine, and that's good enough for me. Like the exact, like there's tons of theologians and other nerds who love to talk about this stuff. Oh well, exactly which class and category and where will they reincarnate in the next planet? Blah blah blah. I don't care about any of this stuff. Like you're divine or you're not divine. If you're divine, good enough for me. I can love you and play with you, and we'll have lots of good times. That's good enough for me.
Yeah. So like peace, love, and whatever. I mean, it isn't this type of thinking the problem. It's just
No, because
whateverism.
I don't think you're understanding my thinking. I'm not talking about some peace, love, hippie stuff. I'm talking about divinity, which is like
Yeah,
a
but that's
metaphysical category.
just a word that there's no context for, which you know there's no context for in this culture.
Oh, and yeah, yeah. I mean, if you were talking about American culture, modern day now, yeah, these are atheistic, not irreligious, monkey people. Of course. I'm talking to you guys right now.
Right.
I
And
would
you
like
ask,
to say that
why are they like that? Well, it's because of the religion. And now you're saying, well, Jesus is just like Krishna. It's like you're trying to make things worse or better
Why is that making things worse or better? Why
because
isn't?
they are Christians.
No, they're not.
They're
no,
influenced
people
greatly by it.
people who believe
Influenced
that
greatly
Christ
by
is the
Christianity.
one and only God
I can
are
prove that
Christians.
we're very influenced by Christianity just through simple cultural evolution of fiscal policy.
Yeah, we're influenced by it, but I mean, when you say they're Christians, like how many of them are doing rosary?
They
You know what I
aren't
mean?
like that. They're not Christians in that sense, but the culture is itself Christianized. And that's exactly what they said to the pagans back in the day. Oh, Jesus is just like your God. And now it's
So,
this. And now
look,
you're still making the connection, and it's like you haven't made the connection that maybe that connection is not correct and is itself a degenerative belief.
Well,
it's
see,
not
the
that
thing
hard.
is, the Christians tried to make equivalences between Christianity and paganism in order to convert pagans to Christianity. We're saying that Christ was just one of many.
Yeah.
There's many ways. If you want to bring Vedanta into the Christian world, it's
Well,
already been done
what's his name?
before successfully.
Yeah, what's his name did that? The one who people always say came up with good arguments in favor of God. I want to say, he was a monk. You guys know who I'm talking about?
Paramahansa Yogananda.
No, this guy was a Christian monk. And he used to-
Aquinas?
yeah, exactly. Aquinas' best arguments are Vedantic. Thank you, Bub Elvis. Yeah, so it has been done before. And what's the end result? Doubling down on this. Liberalism needed the English language to happen.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. There's zero liberalism in China, Japan, these countries. They're just laughing. And it's so funny because they had a communist revolution. Wow.
Well, that's what I'm saying. These ideologies are all similar: Christianity, communism, Bolshevism.
Well, the political aspect of Christianity, yes, it can be quite
The
revolutionary.
personal aspect is highly irrelevant, especially when you can't even point to any anecdotes. You can't say, "Oh, here's this enlightened person who's a Christian." You can't point to those. I'm sorry to say it. Sounds
I
mean,
found
but there's
I found a few.
see again. You're fighting against something that's not a matter of opinion, and to state otherwise, just like sad, like literally sad.
I don't follow.
I would like to point out that there is actually another comparison that can be made between Krishna and Christ, and that is the substance use.
The what?
Substance use. both Krishna and Christ both used and endorsed the usage of cannabis and psilocybin mushrooms.
I'm not familiar with that. Sounds groovy.
Okay, let's put it like this. I'll start with Christianity because I'm a lot more familiar with it. So there's this herb in the Bible called calamus. Now that's a mistranslation, or actually a transliteration.
Anyway,
From
I'm very happy that you have these ideas, but I don't want to go into a big dissertation about this. The point is that the religions taught by these respective entities are very different, except in a couple of superficial ways. That is
or
fact.
they're very similar, except in a couple of superficial ways,
Yeah, they're
depending on how you look at it.
exactly. And I totally err towards the side Howie is mentioning, meaning if you're an actual genuine practitioner of spirituality, like there's like not much difference, especially like what Christ taught and what Krishna taught. I don't even see the differences. Like they're there, but I don't even see them because the actual practice is like the same thing. Love your neighbor as yourself. Like, I mean,
That
it's
was
not
not what Krishna taught. Krishna taught declare war on your cousins for being degenerates. That's what Krishna taught.
If
well.
if
You have
that
to
is your
see
dharma,
what neighbor
if that
means.
is your dharma,
Yeah, if that is your dharma, that's the big if. Yeah, that was a bad
You
example I
want to
said,
be
but
and
well,
actually,
there,
there
there is
there
a,
are
kind of
arguments
karma
made.
because it's an
There are
opportunity
arguments
to get
made
more
that
honor.
Christ taught the same thing. So
Christ did not preach to go declare war in the name of Dharma. Christ never mentioned Dharma a single time.
when there were tax collectors in the church, Christ and his followers ran through, beating them with whips, flipping over tables, and chasing them out. That is not peaceful. That is not just, loving
Wow,
your
what an
neighbor and
amazing
taking it
anecdote.
on the other
We're
cheek.
not talking about an anecdote here, Howie. We're talking about a corpus of teachings. I'm not even sure what that anecdote is supposed to prove exactly, but the point is that you can't point to me where it says Jesus saying you must declare war upon your cousins for having violated Dharma. And that is the entire point of that conversation.
well,
I'm sorry, it's
if,
an absurd
if you want to talk
guy
about the
who taught pacifism mostly, who traveled around.
yeah, look, but
Krishna was
look at how funny this is.
God who was born in a prison and ascended to the throne because he was literally God.
Jen, look at what's happened in history though. Like you have Krishna saying exactly as you've said, declare war even on your neighbors in Dharma and for all these. It's very not pacifistic, right? But then what has actually happened? The
Yeah,
Hindu people
Christianity is
have
very
been very
pacifistic.
pacifistic.
Christianity is very pacifistic and also belligerent, paradoxically, but it's not actually a paradox because it suppresses the aggression in one way, so it comes out more in another way.
Look, what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita is one thing, and then what all the Goswamis say and Vyasadev and all the other sages, they often say a very different thing. And most of the past 5,000 years has actually been people following the other guys and not following Krishna. So, like, which, I mean, so look, I love to talk about Krishna, but that's not really Hinduism. That's he's he's the ideal, which is like so far beyond our ability to achieve that like we don't even try. That's like what most Hindus are doing, I feel like.
What about Kalki?
Oh, I love him.
Well, this is just one of these things, right? Like there's these anecdotes that people become fixated on, like the Maturtles, Kalki, and chakras. It's,
You think chakras is an anecdote?
people become, oh, no, that's not what I mean. People become really like interested in chakras as an anecdotal thing. But
You
it
mean
never
the
goes
way?
deeper than that because they never embraced the way you'd have to think about it to actually get anything out of it. Okay, so I've got the Dash avatar displayed here, but it's not really showing the whole image. So Kalki
What?
is reputed to be the 10th avatar of Vishnu.
Yeah, depending on how you count.
Right. Well, there's some people that claim Buddha is, but I mean, I definitely would not put him in that. I don't think he ever made that claim.
According to Bhagavatam, I just read that chapter recently. There's like, even before Kalki, there was like 18 different incarnations, avatars. I don't remember. It's
Yeah, Kalki's supposed to be the 25th, I think.
So the one I'm familiar with is the 10. 10 avatars: the fish, the turtle, the boar, the lion, and the kings. And then Kalki is like the destroyer at the end.
Oh, I think that's the picture in the Gita book of. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where it's like in the middle, I think is probably Krishna or maybe Chaitanya, but then on the outside border, you have a portrait of each of the incarnations avatars. I think in that picture, it's only 10. So like there's 10 major ones, right? And then there's a longer list of minor ones. Like Vyasadeva is considered an incarnation or avatar of Krishna, and Narada Muni. Like the list can become quite vast.
So I got a question because Kalki is actually very interesting to me. Do you guys think Kalki has already arrived or is not yet to arrive?
Okay, so according to Prabhupada, the last time I read in one of the books, Kalki is okay, and this confirms what Jen was saying a second ago. He's a major avatar of Vishnu, so he will be the final one in Kali Yuga, and Kali Yuga is supposed to be going for another 430,000 more years. So according to the scriptures as I know them, he's definitely not even close to coming here because this world is not even close to as bad as it needs to be to justify big man on campus coming in with a sword and taking care of business.
Well, that is Prabhupada's interpretation, and I'm not a fan of Prabhupada because he even rejects what his own translation of the Gita says, or actually his followers do at least, because his followers will straight up lie to my face about it.
About what?
About Brahman, the chapter we
That
literally
one
went
verse
over.
you just mentioned, bro. That was one verse.
It was actually most of the chapter discussing Brahman.
No, I was reading through chapter 8. Well, I got to verse 11, but look, Brahma, it's really difficult to understand this. You have to look at the translation here. So in Sanskrit, okay, I'm looking at verse 11 now. It says brahmacharyam in the verse, but then Brahman with a capital B in the English translation. Those are two different things. How can we make any sense of that? And in the verse you mentioned, it seems like what Krishna's talking about is actually Atman. He's talking about the self that is in all beings. That's the Atman. And then he says, I am the super soul
and he's
within that supreme self.
And he's referring to older texts which already establish Brahman as the super soul.
Well, no, he definitively, explicitly states, I am the super soul in like the next verse.
Yes, and he also says that Brahman is the super soul in verse prior to that, which implies that he is not actually speaking as himself. It is Brahman speaking through him. We're
Oh,
talking
what
we're
verse are
talking
we
about a
talking
book
about
that
here?
is actually came after. It actually came after hundreds of other books that
Okay,
make it very
what
clear that
chapter
Brahman
and
is
verse are we
all.
talking about here?
The same one, Jen. It's the same one he mentioned before. Brahman is a word for God in these scriptures, in the Upanishads, where it comes up. So Krishna is saying, like in many other ways, he's saying, I am God. That's all. He's God as the super soul, and God as Brahman, and God as Bhagavan. He's saying, I am all of those.
And there were discussions of Brahman well before the Gita was written.
So
So, so, so what I'm saying is that Krishna is just a personality of God. He is not God himself. He is a vessel for God to speak through.
he's both.
Well, yeah, because everything is God, but Krishna became enlightened. He became self-realized, and in doing so, he emptied out his self of his self in order for the high self, the Brahman, to speak through him.
According to Bhagavatam, absolutely not. He decided
I'm
which
reading chapter
womb
8. It's
to
all about
take birth
reincarnation.
into.
It's all about reincarnation in chapter 8.
That
Yeah.
chapter doesn't even talk about what he's talking
There's
about.
nothing where Jesus does not talk about reincarnation, does he?
Krishna chooses which womb to be birthed into, and then he changes the womb a few days before. Like, that's not even a super advanced, enlightened master can't just do that.
How do you
That's
know? How do you know what a super advanced enlightened master can do?
well, I can conjecture. I can compare that with my personal experience. Like, just think, dude. I mean, is that simple? Is that a simple thing? It's
That
like,
doesn't mean it's impossible.
I'm not saying it's impossible. Like, I'm definitely not saying that. I'm just saying it's amazing. That's all.
But see, the thing is, like, when you have this deity which is all pervasive, ever present, and is everywhere and in everyone and everything, you can't have a singular personality of it. You can only have a vessel that can channel the all. You get what I'm saying?
Those are the avatars. Krishna
Yeah,
is an avatar, and
yeah. Krishna wasn't just like a god incarnated into flesh. He was, well, I mean, he was, because God is everywhere, but he was a vessel for God to speak through.
bro, according to the scriptures, all of Vishnu's avatars are both vessels for God and God himself. It's both at the same time. And Krishna is one of many.
And that is because when God is everywhere and everything and everyone, everything and everyone is God.
But you're not God and I'm not God.
Yeah, that's
We both are.
Mayavadiism.
That's
That's
the
Mayavadiism. That's like fart
that,
huffing. Be careful, you could die of an overdose of gas from all that
that's
fart huffing.
Hinduism. That's Hinduism.
Oh yeah, you're gonna tell me what Hinduism is? Is that right?
That's what the Upanishads say. That's what the Gita says.
Oh, dude. Look, the only reason I ask you is, like, I don't mind anyone saying that a lot of Prabhupada followers are, idiots and like doing something the wrong way, because that happens like a lot. But I've seen like basically zero flaws anywhere in Prabhupada. Like, there's a minor things, but nothing substantial.
Well, we don't believe the Supreme takes birth, so I
Yeah,
suppose
and Krishna,
believing that it does is
no one's making that claim. That's what I talked about with the wombs. Like, Krishna is entering into these wombs and pretending like he's taking birth. He's not actually being reincarnated. Oh, I forgot all my past lives. He's deliberately taking his human-bodied birth to make it look like a birth, so people, have some way to, handle this situation. If he just comes in and just like strikes
and I
everything
say
down with lightning.
I say that's a more literalistic approach, whereas there is a more metaphorical approach that once someone becomes enlightened, they realize that God chose this sort of incarnation for them so that they could become the vessel to speak through.
Yeah, I'm sure that's common also.
That also cancels out this concept of the supreme taking birth.
No, it doesn't
it's not
cancel out. You're making a
it's not the
logical leap.
supreme taking birth. It's just the supreme directing a birth so that it can
No,
have a vessel to speak through.
You're speculating that. You're not proving that. That's just your guess. It
We
could
can't
be.
prove any of this.
Yeah, look, I'm a religious person. I go on faith. I'm not trying to logically prove something with like science or something. It's faith. That's faith. Like, there's other people who claim that they made the same claim that Krishna claimed. Oh, I'm God. I'm not just a vessel. I'm actually God. And then what happened with them? Do they have a billion followers 5,000 years later? No, because they're not the real deal. Krishna says, I am the real deal. And all of the evidence points to him being actually the real deal. And I accepted that in my heart. And then he actually came to me and he said, hey, buddy, nice to meet you. And I said, holy shit. And I'm just running off that faith. That's all I need.
Well, there are also people who, follow the Heaven's Gate cult still. You know that, right?
You're saying there's some idiot somewhere in the world? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying that faith isn't really enough.
Well, that says a lot about you and your own, spiritual practice. I mean,
It actually does. That's a very fair judgment there.
I'm not even saying faith is totally enough for me, because it's not, but it works really well. And it's a skill. It's not a blind thing. Like, blind faith is blind faith, and that's a much lesser faith than illuminated faith.
I say spirituality without faith is ideal.
That's impossible. How can that happen?
Well, it was presented to me when I first started researching the occult that there are actually scientifically testable methods of spirituality, and it was furthered to me when I started attending Self-Realization Fellowship, which is the Hindu-Christian crossover church established in 1920 by Paramahansa Yogananda. And they proclaim scientific methods of basically attaining communion with God.
Right. So you go through this whole process of these scientifically tested spiritualities and so on, and then you finally reach your enlightenment and you talk to God. And then what? You have no faith. You just say, "Oh, hey God, how's it going? It's nice to meet you, but I don't have faith, so I'm just going to keep experimenting to see if you actually are there or not there, or I'm just never going to accept you."
Well,
Howie still hasn't accepted that even statements of science require faith in the scientific method itself. He still thinks it's possible to make statements without axioms.
I do, because reality can exist.
What?
Yeah, so that's just a misunderstanding of logic, right? Doc Naring wants to know, does Krishna claim he can forgive sin? I don't really know if there's much in there about forgiveness.
Well, that's just if we're talking about Krishna, there's Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, but then also in the Bhagavatam. And then there's all the other sages and purports and stuff. So I've read many, many, many different times from many different masters that just chanting Maha Mantra once can wash away millions of sin. And I don't want to say I've experienced exactly that, but I have experienced close enough to that where it's totally changed my outlook on everything, especially concerning sin, where like, yeah, I'm just really forgiving to myself and others now because I know no matter how bad the sin is, we're all children in God's eyes. So when one fucked up child does another fucked up thing to another fucked up child, it's always bad. It's always bad. That's sin. It's always bad. But when that child says, "Oh man, I really messed up. I'm sorry, Daddy," he goes, "Oh, no problem. Like, you fucked up. You're supposed to fuck up. You're an idiot. Like, what'd you think was gonna happen?"
Hey, the spirits do not talk to me like a child. They just straight up tell me, like, you do realize you're a fucking dumbass for this, right?
I've got something in the Gita here, translation by Prabhupada about forgiveness. It says intelligence, knowledge, freedom from doubt and delusion, forgiveness, truthfulness, self-control and calmness, pleasure, pain, birth, death, fear, fearlessness, nonviolence, equanimity, satisfaction, austerity, charity, fame, and infamy are created by me alone. So I don't think it's so much in the context of Krishna forgiving Arjun for his sins. It's more just forgiveness being an intrinsically good quality of the soul that Krishna helps to manifest within us.
Oh.
Those gifts sound a lot like the aspects of Lakshmi.
Claire says Krishna was a jihadist. Ugh.
Yeah, that's like Tower of Babel tier nonsense. When people are making arguments like that, you know that like nothing means anything anymore.
I think
Jesus was a yogi.
Jen, you're looking into this way too much. Claire is like pretty funny. Like a lot of stuff she says is just funny. It's not like a truth claim or something. She's more like, on the alt-right way of things. So like that's why I get along with her really well. I just see like a lot of what she says it's just funny, you know?
Ha ha ha.
It's also true. I mean, that's why I think it's funny. Like, no, jihad.
Was Krishna a jihadi though?
Yeah. I mean,
Christ was a yogi.
Oh, and Jesus was a yogi and Krishna was a jihadi. Okay.
Yes.
yes, basically. I mean,
Then
Hey,
how
wait,
come
wait,
the
wait.
religions have been at war with each other forever?
because people are idiots. But when you look at what actually happened in the original stories, it's very different than what we see now.
Merlin was an anarcho-feminist.
Right. Well, if everything is exactly the same, I guess everything is just nothing. Nothing's worth anything, and there's no distinctions anywhere that are meaningful at all.
Nihilist incoming.
Well, don't you think you have to qualify what you're saying? Otherwise, it does lead to that conclusion.
I don't have to do that.
Well, you're saying you're making an argument for love.
I'm not making an argument for love. I'm just existing. Whatever happened like 5 minutes ago, it's already happened. I'm over it.
Can you prove that you exist, though?
Existence is axiomatic. Existence and causality are axiomatic in science.
Just because
And-
I think does not mean that I exist.
Again, so what?
I exist because I exist.
If you're not going to take those things as axiomatic in the abstract sense, you're going to encounter arguments like simulation theory, Big Bang, all this other sorts of stuff.
The thing is, like,
Something
even
logical.
even in a simulation, the simulation is still existing. So even if I don't actually exist, but I'm only in a simulation, that simulation is still existing. I'm just like a different kind of particle, but it's still existence, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a perfectly reasonable axiom because you have the anthropic principle, right? Just the fact that an argument can happen implies existence.
Yep.
And
Bingo.
causality is a good axiom, but is, abused a lot because people don't actually want to commit to causality as an axiom. Because it's too difficult. They'd rather be lazy and just interject whatever instead of causality. I don't know. It's just the human egotism, I guess. They want to put their own spin on things.
It's not always ego. There's also there's a mechanical aspect too. Like, we have limited time span in a day, in our lifetime. We all have to pick our battles,
Speaking of spin and causality, how fast does the graviton spin?
I don't accept that gravitons exist. I think gravity force is instantaneous.
I know.
So
That's why I said something about it.
the point is that it's an aesthetic. If you want to disagree with the aesthetic, I don't care, because the differential between that and reality is very small. So even if I'm wrong, it's such a small distinction from being right that computationally is not relevant. Plus, I'm not sold on the quantization. There's an obvious problem with quantization at that level, interpreted in that way, and actually reconciling it with what's observed in reality.
So look, guys, I gotta get going. I have class early in the morning tomorrow, and every other day. But
Yeah, that was awesome. I appreciate you coming over and talking about stuff, and Howie too. It's been great. Did you have any final words, Ethos, before we wrap it up?
Thanks again, Jen. I like your house, your digital house here, and yeah, it was fun. I like the trajectory today. We got a little more interesting in the end. And
good. Well, hopefully
yeah,
we can continue into the future, and we're really glad to have your contribution.
sweet. Thanks.
Take care, man. We'll see you later. Howie, did you want to ask some questions, or we can wrap it up? It's up to you.
I don't really have any more questions right now.
All the answers and no questions. I think maybe people are short-circuiting a bit. So yeah, tune in next time for an awesome stream, and we'll see you Sunday, if not sooner. Actually, it will be sooner because I'm going on Halsey's tomorrow with Duvid, and that should be good at 9 p.m. Eastern, I believe. And yeah, that's about it. I also got a new microphone. Thanks for noticing, Nicholas Petrus. Take care, everyone, and good night.
Yeah, but that's just so to say, a worthless opinion of.
It's so important that she can't be told, she won't be told that it's wrong. And
bringing it back to Church of Entropy and her attack dog Gandalf the White.
Why don't you learn to shut up and fuck goddamn logic?
They control the media, and the media is capable of making the sheeple believe in anything.
Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, we've had these streams, and I've been doing the Church of Entropy, and she's been bringing on new people, and like we did those streams on like stream etiquette. We walked through like the technology.
I have like very strongly negative opinions of the kind of Brundle clique.
Is she trying to
She
garner
tried to
herself
create
cult
community
prestige
in
by
recruiting, trying to
associating
create community.
herself with a retard?